and welcome to the Soundtrap Education Summit, where we are all about music and podcasting and the spoken word, and really just about anything that can help amplify students' voice. My name is Matt Miller. I'm the host of the summit. And in today's session, you're going to be getting so many cool ideas to inspire your students through music, through recording, because our guest has a ton of really fantastic ideas to share. We've been kind of going over it a little bit before we went on air, and I know that he's just going to bring the fire. So LaFouji Alexander is with us today. LaFouji, thank you so much for joining us. And can you tell everybody just a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, thank you, Matt. My name's LaFouji Alexander, and I am Director of Bands at Invest Collegiate Transform in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I've been working in music practically all my life. I taught in college there. I went to Western Carolina there, where I learned, got my minor in MIDI synthesis. So it's just a dream come true to be able to put that skill set to youth and education. So thanks a lot, Matt. I'm glad.
Yeah, no, awesome. We're super excited to get to partner up with you, because you're doing some pretty cool stuff in the classroom, and we're going to get to that here pretty quickly. But I know you've been watching some of these Soundtrap Summit sessions. LaFouji was telling me he's watched all of them, but we're only going to just talk about a couple of them here in this session. One of them that I wanted to chat with you about was the one about digital media, where Jake Sandackley and Claudio Zavala were giving us a bunch of ideas, just some practical things to help students be creative. Jake talked about the big production that he put on through Zoom, which was impressive. And so just in that session, LaFouji, since you got to watch that, what were some of the takeaways that you had from that? Like, what's some of the stuff that's kind of stuck with you related to that?
Some of the things that really stuck with me as concerning with the digital media is how Soundtrap kind of encompasses all of the disciplines and allows us a creative way to do virtual performances, especially during the pandemic. Most of us have performing type groups there. So it's just a breath of fresh air just to be able to have a program like Soundtrap to help aid in virtual performances. So I think that that's just absolutely huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that was one of the things I thought of when I was hearing these guys talk, was just how much all of this could be connected over to, like you said, different disciplines, different content areas, different grade levels and everything. And man, like, for the teachers that knew about Soundtrap and had access to it during remote learning, like, how much of a difference does that make?
Oh, total game changer.
Yeah.
The ability to, bring a student into a one-on-one session there and video chat live and, see what they're thinking, hear what they're hearing. It's just a total game changer there. It boosts the creativity for them to be able to hear themselves in playback. It builds self-confidence. It allows them to collaborate with other students, which is huge right now because everyone's in the house and, the friends are not around. So there's a social, emotional learning aspect there too, of just feeling the community, knowing that you're feeling connected, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk about something that all of us could really use, right about now, as much as we've been so disconnected in many ways. And there's that was definitely one of my takeaways too. As far as the other one that you got to watch, this was with Marcus Blackwell and Bob Habersat, talking about using music to reach students and help them learn. And man, you talk about a couple of guys who are doing some really cool stuff, and not just teaching music for the sake of teaching music, but like infusing it into other subjects. Like that was pretty cool, huh?
Oh, that was absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
It had to be my favorite one, I must say. I watched that one probably 3 times. It was just so rich, so many nuggets that you can take away back into the classroom to help out with engagement, which is a real big issue right now, and with just empowerment. and taking Soundtrap just out of the traditional music realm and a practical example of how you can use music with math. And one of the things that I did with my students that was absolutely incredible was the heroes versus villains, where from Mr. Marcus Blackwell uses half steps to teach songs. So it's kind of infusing music and math. So I took that and said, hey, if you want to build a minor chord, there we would simply go, 3 half steps plus 4 half steps, major chord, 4 half steps plus 3 half steps. And what's truly amazing is that within Soundtrap, you get to see the application, which is so very important. We talk about major chords and we talk about minor chords and we hear the differences, but to be able to apply them in your own use and with your own creativity is truly a game changer. So there's a superhero inside of all of us, which traditionally had the major sound. There's a villain in some of us that has the minor sound. And sometimes you have this gray area, this conflict, and that's major over minor, or villains and heroes like Harley Quinn or Batman or the Joker, ones that don't, kind of fit in the traditional thought of hero and super villain there. I'm sorry there, but yeah, it's just great. It's just a great way to connect the dots.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to hear more about that in just a second. That is fantastic. I know that you can expound on that a little bit more probably. And see, what I love about that is that that's the kind of stuff right there that seems to reach all of your kids. I bet that you probably have some of those kids that come in that are your music students that are like totally dialed in. They're your like high achievers. They're the ones that are gonna, get it despite the teacher almost, like they're totally internally motivated and everything, but that's not everybody. And so like, it seems to me like, tell me what you think. It seems to me like this is the kind of stuff that's going to help really connect with the rest of those students, right?
Matt, you hit the nail on the head. Sometimes we have to go outside of the traditional pedagogies and look and meet the students where they are and differentiate the practices for certain students so that way they become more involved, more engaged. And that's what it's all about, is creating a passion that in turn fuels a discipline. And that varies because, times are, has changed there. So we have to look outside of the box for opportunities to engage students. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it sounds like that's the kind of thing that you're doing an awful lot of. Like, for instance, let's get back into this heroes and villains lesson. And the more that you talked about it, I realized it was more than just half steps. There's a lot that went into this. Let's talk about that a little bit, because Soundtrap is a part of that lesson, but it's also a lesson that probably, it sounds to me like, reaches a lot of those kids, whether they feel like, they self-identify as music is my thing, or if they're just, in the class because they're in the class. So like, let's kind of dive. Can you dive a little deeper into that and give us some more details?
Yes, sir. Well, it's all about the conflict and resolution of each person.
Yeah.
That hero that lives inside of us, that conflict of doing what's right and battling against what's wrong. And we're complex individuals, and every person has a story. So what this assignment does is allow the student the artistic freedom to express themselves as a superhero, as a villain, maybe somebody in between, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's just so very important. So not only does it cover the, theory and the application of major and minor chords, but it's about self-awareness, self-worth, self-confidence, and most of all, self-expression.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Can you kind of walk us through this this lesson, this sort of like unit that you do? Like, how does this show up in the classroom? Like, what kind of stuff are the students doing?
Oh, well, they are asked to create a 2-minute composition with changes. So I like to identify the parts of the song. So it's important that you have an intro, that you have a identifiable verse and identifiable chorus and some kind of change, some kind of bridge, something that takes me somewhere that I hadn't been, kind of brings me back to the main section. So that's a part of the lesson as well, just song structure, being able to identify the parts of a song and understanding that all of the hit songs go the same way. They all have this format that makes them special, that makes them alike. But within that format, when you listen to these hit songs, you can move things around a little bit.
Right.
But identifying the sections is so very important there. So that's a part of it. Knowing the theoretical application behind major and minor chords and what makes them work. And so I can play that for them live and kind of show them the half steps and kind of and how that works is huge. And then for them to be able to check for understanding is them creating the project, right? So we as teachers, we as educators want to know that it stuck, like the students learned something. And what Soundtrap does is just showcases the, reassurance of the applications of all the things that you teach all year long, and you hear it in their projects and their faces. They're so proud of what they did. And then after that, I take all of the heroes and all of the villains and I pair them with each other. So a villain is with the villain and a hero is with a hero, and then they collaborate. And then the next assignment, I switch it all up. Heroes have to work with the villain have to work with the hero. And what that does is build relationships with the students. Seldomly do I pair friends or, groups of people who hang out outside of band. I'm always trying to get maybe a high performer with a low performer, or someone who knows the program extremely well, who's super excited, work with someone who's just learning it or new to the school. So it helps build my band community. It gives the students self pride, and it's just super awesome on presentation day when I get to hear the fruits of their labor. It's just amazing.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing. I have so many questions. I'm so curious about this whole thing. Like, this is fantastic because, like, with this right down here, whenever you pair the hero with the hero, the villain with the villain, and then you switch it up, like, for one thing, I've heard, especially elementary teachers talk about how if you want students to express themselves, sometimes if you can have the students identify through like a stuffed animal or through like a character that they draw or something, then they're not necessarily talking about themselves, and it makes them freer to open up and everything. I've got to think that sort of plays into this, right?
Absolutely. The freedom to dream, the freedom to be. And these students are just learning themselves. So self-discovery is a major part of this. And that's a journey, as we both know. I mean, they're young and they're learning about themselves and about their minds and their bodies and testing limits and boundaries.
Yes.
And it's just, yes, that's a huge part of it.
Yeah. No, No, that's great. There was something else I wanted to ask you about this too. It was related to, I'm going to give it just a second to see if it comes back. One of the things, no, I think it's, this just happened in another recording too. I had a really good question and then it just like escaped from my mind. And I like, now I remember what it was. The point I wanted to make was I don't hear a lot. Now, granted, I'm not like super around, music teachers and band directors and all of that. So I hope that I'm wrong on this, but I don't hear a lot of people talking about music lessons in this way, framed through the idea of heroes and villains and like superheroes and like all of that stuff. And so I wanted to ask you why you decided to do that and why you think it's important.
Wow, that's a great question there. Let me think about it. That's a real good question.
Yeah.
You got to ask me that question one more time,
okay.
man.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It's just, wanting to know, because you don't hear of, if I were thinking of the traditional like music lesson, it's all very focused on the music. If you were going to teach major and minor chords and half steps and stuff like that, like we're going to explicitly teach those things, but you do it through the lens of, through the frame of the superheroes, and why that is so important to you.
I think it's very, very important to step back at times and take a different look and approach with the application of learning music. That is huge. And we have, in a traditional sense, we as educators have done a great job in teaching children how to read and what a quarter note looks like and what the definitions are and all the symbols and all the definitions there. But we haven't did a great job on teaching self-expression and creativity. So what I like to say is that equally important as reading music is creating music, the self-expression and the freedom that the students get there. And I think that that's a great component that Soundtrap, adds. So not only, can I get to, well, I learned Moonlight Sonata, but I might be able to put my own feel in it. How would it be played if he was alive today, kind of deal.
Yeah.
So it's just a great opportunity to just look at the same thing, but in a different way and with a new approach.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you a quick follow-up to that. With that new approach, if you ever had a teacher, if you were telling another teacher about this, you're like, oh, this is really cool, this is really working for me. And that other teacher said, yeah, but I don't think I have enough time to do all of that extra stuff. Like I've got so much stuff in my curriculum that I've got to get through. Like, what would be your response to that?
Well, Soundtrap for me personally has been a time saver.
Okay.
So it actually works in the opposite sense because everything that I could, use and need there is there and in a practical sense. So it's not that it's costing me. And plus the interface is just so clean. Yeah. It's so user friendly. I've taught Pro Tools on a college level, and I remember students just cringing, trying to understand the DAW and all the pages, and it's a lot going on. It's a 3 to 6 months learning curve on some of your complex DAWs, but Soundtrap, I mean, you can open it up, watch a tutorial, and you can get started making music in minutes. And that's the joy, the simplicity of it. It's kind of the quickest way from your mind to the speakers. Yeah. And that's a great time saver. The ability to use MIDI. So, children can go in and practice with the right notes and record themselves and give feedback to themselves and, to each other has been a total game changer in band, where I used to have to say, hey, that section, you hit a couple bad notes, the rhythm, something wasn't right. They're stopping themselves. They're stopping their own sections and say, hey guys, that's not right. I played this back last night in Soundtrap and, it's not as good as it can possibly be. So what I find out is that the students want to correct themselves, that they want to make themselves better and learn more and be more independent. Yeah. So like Bob Haberstadt said, he said, you give them the microphone. Yes. You turn the microphone all the way up. You teach them how they use that microphone, and you have to do what some band directors and some music teachers don't like to do, with get out of the way and let them
Yeah.
grow and let them fly and let them experiment, let them, make train wrecks and
Yeah.
experiment
Yeah.
with things and just
Uh-huh.
watch this prop. And then, months later, 2 to 3 months later, they're, creating complex arrangements and
Yeah.
doing music in other genres, right? Rock, Latin, things that they kind of like. And then they're mixing genres and learning the
Mm-hmm.
beauty of fusions, that
Mm-hmm.
things don't have to be just pure hip hop or pure country. You can mix them together, and all of a sudden you got an Old Town Road, which encompasses the best of both genres, right?
Uh-huh.
And you'll kind of take what's there and combine the colors and create something new. And yeah, it just has been great, great time saver, a great investment. And not only do we use it as a music tool here, but
Mm-hmm.
we use it in, theater as a voiceover tool.
Oh,
The
yeah.
voice to
Mm-hmm.
text is amazing. So you can speak. It's like Google Voice to Text. So you
Yeah.
talk inside of it. A
Right.
document pops up. You
Mm-hmm.
can go in and take stuff in and out. That is great for podcasting,
Mm-hmm.
for theater voiceovers. Our chorus, just for children being able to sing at home virtually, sing inside of Soundtrap, and then you can go in there and grade it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did even show them the auto tune button. So if you're kind of close but not quite there, you can put a little
That's cool.
T-Pain on it.
Yeah.
And just having all those tools
Yeah.
on a device, because as you know, not all of our students have access to Apple computers. So GarageBand was, great, but my school, for a budget of 300 Apple computers, may not be in your budget, but to be able to have a program that's accessible on all types of devices
Yeah.
is game changer. So if they have a tablet, a Google Chrome, a MacBook, a PC, a Dell, just a smartphone. I had this one student who all they had in the house was a smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
And you would swear up and down that he had a full-blown recording studio.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. And I get emails from all of my students that tells me how much they worked on a project. And I have been getting emails 10, 11 o'clock on Friday and Saturday nights when they could be gaming, when they could be on Instagram and Facebook. They chose to express themselves musically with Soundtrap, and that's huge. So
Yeah. Oh man, that's fantastic. This reminds me so much of because I taught high school Spanish for more than 10 years, and there's so many crossovers to what you're saying here. For instance, whenever students are learning Spanish, if you let them make that messy language, make mistakes and stuff, but just encourage them to do it, it starts to get over that confidence barrier, and then they're able to start creating and kind of like owning it. And then after a while, the stuff that they create, like, it just blows you away. And that's something that they're able to do whenever you, just like you said, hand them the microphone and turn it up, and then that way they're not all worried about, oh, am I making a mistake every single time? Oh, do I have everything? It's like at some point you've just got to go create, and that sounds like that's very similar in some ways to what you're talking about. So I love it. I think it's great.
Yes, sir. And just to piggyback off that, is something that you said in the summit, Matt, that has just stayed with me.
Yeah.
And you talk about the journey of having a vision of where you want to be and not quite having the skill set to get there. But if you stay with that vision and you work at it hard every single day, you're getting closer to your vision.
Yes.
And your abilities are increasing. And that's what it's all about, is helping these students to understand and appreciate their journey. And that's just the best part of it all. Just seeing them start here and just grow into something. Start here and create something, see it through from, start to finish, and the journey across the way of your progression is just sweet to watch.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. That's fantastic. I love it. I love it. Okay, so here's what I'd love to hear from you at this point. And we could do this off of superheroes and villains. We could do this off of any of the types of lessons that you teach with students. But I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about kind of like the workflow within Soundtrap to make this stuff work. Like if you were a student in your class sitting down to do one of these activities, like what kind of what does it look like? Kind of like start to finish. What are some of the tips that you give them? What are some of the lessons that they've learned to really make the most of Soundtrap?
Well, one thing that I do encourage, which I think is one of the top tools that's talked about the least, is favorites, right?
Oh, okay.
So, although I may be working on superheroes this week and villains is due next week, in that process, as I'm going through the loops, I think it's important to take the time to put things that you like, that speak out to you, that may not have anything to do with your current progress. Your current project, but sure, things that just speak to you. So that way, when you're looking for things and you want to be inspired, you can go back and look through your favorites. So as I'm looking for, major chords, I may come across something minor that just strikes me in a way, and I don't need to sit on that, right? I should mark that. I should come back to that because that's something that could be used later. It could be something that you use in a project too as well. So favorites is just huge, right? Also, not being afraid to get in and actually play some MIDI. Use a controller, use your keyboard to, instead of finding a loop, maybe there's a drum track in your head that you can't find a loop for, to actually take the chance and try to go in and play that out, right? Play the rhythm, see the rhythm. There is just a great application there. And don't be afraid to collaborate. One of the things that we have to do is see music outside of ourselves. There are times when we second guess greatness, right? It's already good, but you want to make changes. Hey, invite a friend over, get some constructive criticism of some things that you can do in your music to make it exciting, to make it different. And the last thing was really dive into the automation effects. And that's just a great way of taking the same sound and making it sound a little bit different. Putting your own personal stamp on things, I think, is, super important. Get to know what the effects do. What is the function of an equalizer? What is the role of a compressor? How can I use auto-tune, not for the T-Pain or traditional effect, but it's just a little pitch correction to kind of round things off. Look into some of the applications such as quantizing your performances, making things a little bit tighter there. There's another tip there. So those are all great things that you can do to kind of give your music and your projects a little facelift. A little lipstick, make it a little extra, polish it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Make it extra special.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've got to say, I'm happy to hear you saying that you encourage your students to use stuff like auto-tune and all of that. Like, and again, I'm going to make the comparison back to Spanish. A lot of Spanish teachers hate on Google Translate. And I can kind of get that, but there's a point where you've got to go, you know what? I mean, it's kind of like the old school math teachers that say, well, just watch, one of these days, you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket. Well, guess what? We've all got a calculator in our pocket now, And it's like with translate, like you can translate a word anytime. So that doesn't mean that we should say, a real linguist will never use a translator. It's not like saying a real mathematician should never use a calculator. And it's also like saying a real musician should never use auto-tune, right? I mean, there are tools that are available at our disposal, and we've got to figure out when are the right times to use them and when should we not use them, right?
That is so very true. So the first person to use auto-tune, I believe, was Cher, right? So
Really?
then, yes,
Hmm.
Believe in Love After Love. And then it was used kind of as a novelty effect, but now it's industry standard. So whether
Hmm.
it's like auto-tune that you can hear, there's pitch correction on everything.
Hmm.
And it's time for us to take a modern approach to music. One of the things that Bob brought up in the session was the modern musician versus the traditional
Yeah.
musician. And it
Yeah.
all boils down to the mindset, right? So I love the clarinet. I think it sounds, beautiful. I love
Hmm.
clarinet players, but unfortunately, when you graduate college, there aren't that many professional clarinet jobs.
Hmm.
It's time to take a different approach to music, kind of look behind the scenes, and so that way we can prepare our students for the expectation of today's workforce.
Right.
And that way they're prepared and it ensures their success.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. It's time for us to take a modern, you know what? Let's do it in all caps with an exclamation point. There we go. It's time to take a modern approach to music. I love that. That is fantastic, man. Very good. Very good. Um, Talk to me about epic beat battles.
All right.
I'm going to hear about this.
Epic beat battles are huge at my school, right?
Yeah.
So we have a panel there, and I'll let the students kind of vote, what they think is the top song. So the beat battles is about a collaboration,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So we have like the duo contest where you have to team up with someone. And let's say that I have a great piano player, here, and I have a good drummer. Well, I wouldn't put the piano player with the piano players. I'm going to pair a
Hmm.
piano player with the drummer.
Yeah.
And so that way that they can kind of dive into the expertise of another student. Because contrary to popular belief, a lot of students believe that the instructor is the primary person for resources and information. But what I found is students learn a lot from themselves by
Hmm.
just sharing and sharing. Hey, I do it this way. Because the good thing about digital is that there's 10 ways to do the exact same thing. And
Hmm.
the bad thing about digital is that there's 10 ways to do the exact same
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
So just that approach alone of saying, hey, you kind of do it this way. I kind of do it this way. And you kind of learn from both there. So I think that that's just,
Hmm.
super important there. Super
Hmm.
important.
Yeah, yeah. And I know you were talking earlier about how in something like this, whenever they start to collaborate and they start to mix things together, like, you start to see some of those genres coming together. I thought Old Town Road was a great example of that, and do you feel like that kind of, I would imagine that's a place where you start to see that kids are starting to really own the fundamentals. Like once they've got those fundamentals and they're able to start kind of playing with them and making their own things out of them. And I've got to believe that some of that comes from just giving him the microphone, just giving him Soundtrap, just giving them a place to create and then go play with it themselves. Like, am I on track on that?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's all about the microphone, turning it up loud,
Yeah.
equipping them with the tools and the resources that they need, and just saying, hey, go be creative. Go make something that's never been made. Think about it in a different way. And it teaches them a lot about themselves. So we're not one thing anymore like we used to be. It used to be that all of the people that like rap listen to hip hop, and all the people that like country listen to country. Well,
Uh-huh.
we're more than one thing. I don't have to be, black or white. I can be gray. Like I can
Mm-hmm.
like EDM and metal. I can appreciate, country, bluegrass, and hip hop. And
Uh-huh.
that's a
Yeah.
part of my palette. And I can express that. And that's a part of my personality, and I
Mm-hmm.
identify with individuals who,
Mm-hmm.
see it the same way. So yes, it's about that. And it's also about self-discovery, and not saying that I have to be one thing. I can merge, genres, and I can have an appreciation for, classical and trip hop and EDM and, just different types of genres there.
Yeah. Yeah. One other thing I wanted to ask you about, I heard, we were talking about this a little bit before, is that whenever you ask students to practice and to create and to, do some of that messy music, so to speak, and everything, it's not that you're asking them to do it and you're not doing it yourself, right? Like, you're in on it as well, right?
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that as educators, that we have to model the way, right? So I think and sometimes we kind of confuse that with being the know-all or expert, and you don't want to seem vulnerable, but the truth is that we all have strengths and we all have weaknesses, and it's how we manage those. And I think it's good to show vulnerability. So sometimes students will come in my room and I'm working on a jazz lick and I'm doing it over and over again, and they're sitting there watching me like, is class start now? And I'm like, hold up. Yeah. Just a few more times. Yeah. And then sometimes I'll ask a student who's, struggling on the part or who learned it first, hey, how many hours did you put in learning that, right? So it gives me kind of a compass of what I had to put in to get to the certain level that I want to be at. And I think that that's just gold there. It's just the discovery that you find in learning.
Yeah. I've got to think, like, just all the way across the board, no matter what you teach, if students can see you enjoying and appreciating the craft and still participating in the craft, no matter what it is that you teach, and seeing the struggles and understanding, like, that was one of the things as a student myself, I think I didn't understand that struggles are just part of the process, and that everybody struggles. And I've got to think that if you've got a transparent teacher, like it seems like you are, I love what you just said there. Class is getting ready to start and you're working on this, this one section, and the students are like, is class going to start? You know what I wanted to say when you said that? I was like, class is starting. This is class, right?
You are right. That is the journey. And they kind of see that there. And that's just so important. Yeah. That is just, huge. Class has started there. And that's just a part of the growth process. It's something that we all go through. And I think that's important. And one of the things that I do every year is called the Teacher Challenge. So after I'm, done giving my students Lion King music to learn from the musical and, the Disney World music for our Disney performances or, special band performance, I'll allow them to challenge me. It's called the Teacher Challenge. So they vote and they pick a one song that I have to learn and create in Soundtrap. And what that does is, keeps me abreast on what's going on and what they're listening to and how music has, changed from when I was their age, and how some parts of music has stayed the same. So there's a lot of similarities and differences there. Yeah. And I just look forward to the Teacher Track Challenge is what we call it. So they pick a song, they vote on it, and I have to recreate that song in front of them. And sometimes it's difficult. I may stumble and they may say, hey, that's not quite what that's doing in the record there. And I'll be like, I taught you well, grasshopper. Or,
yeah, exactly.
Hey, that's clearly a minor chord. And I think you sound a little majorish there, Alexander. Yeah. So, it's just a great discovery there, just to see, them to see me stumble and fall, but get back up. Yeah. And, we always get there. So that's fun there. It's called the Teacher Track Challenge. Have your students to, vote and find a piece of music, and I transcribe it there on the spot live. And it's normally about a 2-class period kind of deal, because I like to talk about the, sections and how I approach things. Like, am I going to start from the start with drums, start with the rhythm section, or am I going to start from the bass line, which kind of tells me the tonic of each chord, or so it's just different ways to approach that, and different people do it different ways.
Yeah.
It's like there are some singers who prefer to write to the music, right? And then you have these super producers like, Quincy Jones and, Timberland, who can hear a song and then create the music. So I like kind of working from both ways to say, all right, I have this musical idea. Maybe a writer can write to it, or maybe it's already written. And I have to use my musical chops to support the idea that's there. So looking at it from both ways is super important.
Yeah. I love that. Because that shows them your process too. Like, I mean, there's the notes on the page and everything. There's the lyrics, there's, all of that stuff. But how do you get there in the first place? Like, I mean, it's kind of like if somebody wanted to write a book, they're like, how in the world do I come up with a book? It's like the same thing with a song, I'd imagine, and letting them in on the process, and then also letting them know that, there are different ways to approach it and everything. That's got to be really big to help them, like empower them to really become creators.
Absolutely. I was taught that good music is at the intersection of where art meets science. And you could be 60-40 either way, 70-30 either way. It just depends on who you're paired with and what you're doing. So there's a portion of music that relies on discipline, musicianship, knowing your instrument, knowing your craft, knowing your fingering, knowing the language so you can communicate. But then there's another part of it feels right.
Yeah.
How do major chords make me feel happy? Why do I feel happy or sad or excited, or the suspense, the tension, and the release is what it's all about there. So that's an invaluable learning experience right there that I think we often overlook.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. This has been so good. Like, I feel like we could talk for like hours and hours more about this, man. It's been so good. So, as we kind of wrap up here, if anybody's watching this and they're like, man, this is fantastic. Like, if anybody wants to, be in touch or learn more of you, like basically if they need more LaFouji Alexander in their life, like where's the best place for them to go?
You can reach me at LaFouji@gmail or LaFouji Alexander at Invest Collegiate Transform.
All right. So one of those is LaFouji@gmail, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Excellent. Okay. So just reach out directly by email. That's very generous. That's awesome.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I am a open book. Music is always on my mind. I'm always happy to discuss strategies or ways that I can help or ways that you can help me. So it's a team effort. Yes, it's a team effort.
I also have to say that makes you one of the impressive few that I've met that has their first name as a Gmail address. Because Matt@gmail.com. Matt@gmail.com was gone a long time ago, way before I even knew it was a thing, so.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That is the beauty of having a name, something that sounds like something that you caught on your foot. Like I have a LaFouji. And so I got pretty lucky there, and it's worked against me my whole life in college. It's like LaFouji, LaFouki. But now it kind of works well to have LaFouji at Yahoo, LaFouji at Gmail, LaFouji Alexander at investcollegiatetransform.org. It's great. It's great.
That's awesome. Very good. Hey, this has been the best time. Like I've so enjoyed our conversation. I think you brought so many practical, concrete ideas. There was inspiration in there. I mean, I'm inspired. I thought it was fantastic. You're like the music teacher that I wish that I had when I was in school,
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot. That's what that means a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time.
All right.
All right. And thank you all so much for watching this and for being a part of the Soundtrap Education Summit. We'll catch you on the next session. Take care.